Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of my Bigfoot sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of run-down no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, love's in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland roads where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
If you'd like to be able to listen to the show without ads and have full access to bonus content, that's an option. To find out how, please go to mybigfootsighting.com.
My Bigfoot sightings started as a child, and they've still continued through my life. And it's always been that way with me growing up. Some people say it could be a magnet, and some people just say coincidence. As a child, growing up, seeing them all through my younger years as a kid, teenagers, you name it, junior high, high school, we always ran into them. And we've never had any problems with them. They've always observed us, or we were lucky enough to observe them. Just depending on the situation. And there was no beef between us. They were never hostile towards us. It was always more curious about what we're doing and why we're doing it. My first encounter as a child was on the riverbank with my dad. We were fishing. I was about 5. I still remember this very, very clear. My dad stuck me by a tree. And actually, this tree was in the middle of a field at the time on the edge of a riverbank. Now the river has receded way back and that tree is no longer there. So that's a long time. But in the early years, my dad told me to stay there. Don't do anything crazy. Stay away from the edge of the river. He went down to the edge of the river at the bottoms and he was setting his poles up. And he was about 40 yards down north of me. So I'm sitting there doing what little boys do. It was a pecan tree. So I'm picking up pecans and I'm throwing pecans and just doing what little boys do. I'm having a heyday. Well, my little goofy self decided to head on over to the edge of the river. I got to the edge of the river and I'm sitting there and throwing dirt clods in, finding rocks, throwing them in there. And I don't know what possessed me. Something possessed me to start jumping up and down, landing on the edge. I never thought the edge would give, but it did. And when the edge went, I went with it. And it's about a 10-foot fall, maybe a good 8-foot fall. Then you hit the little embankment on it, and then it goes into the river. Well, as I was falling, my arms were in the air, and someone caught me. And I'm sitting there trying to figure out what's going on. And I just remember being lifted up and being brought in. And what, to my knowledge at the time of a 5-year-old, was I'm looking at a big dog that's holding me. And then I sat and looked at him and I knew it wasn't a dog. Now I'm looking at a monkey. And I can still remember him very, very clearly. And he was just looking at me and he was smiling. So I'm smiling back and I'm trying to figure out what he is. Why do I have a monkey holding me? That's what I'm actually thinking. And I remember him walking over to where my dad was at, and my dad's down below. And the Bigfoot actually put me down and he pointed and gestured over to my dad. So I'm sitting there still looking at him, trying to figure him out. He's big. He's hairy, and I'm just looking at him, but there was no smell, no bad smell whatsoever. So I'm sitting here still trying to figure it out, and he points and keeps pointing towards my dad. Well, finally, I guess I get it, and I take off to my dad, and I go down to the bottom of the riverbank, and I was telling my dad what happened, and my dad was looking at me, and he was checking me over. He goes, "Where's he at?" I said, "He's up there," and my dad took off running to the top of the bank. And he gets up to the top of the bank. I'm maybe 10 seconds behind him. maybe 15 seconds behind him. He's sitting there looking to the west, kind of southwest. And I just get to the top and I just catch a glimpse of the Bigfoot walking back into the woods, into the shadows. And my dad was just sitting there looking at what he saw. I know he probably got a full visual. But he just kind of stopped and he looked and he turned around and he looked at me. And I'm looking back at him and he goes, "Did he hurt you?" I said, "No." "What happened?" So I filled him in again and told him what I was doing. And he was just looking at me. My dad was looking at me kind of baffled. And it was just an odd experience. And just having that experience, that was my first recollection of seeing and having an encounter with a Sasquatch. And as I was growing throughout the years, and I'm in junior high, well, from 5 years old to junior high, that's what? I can't even think math-wise, but it's a time span, maybe 10 years. I would say 7 or 8 years. I'm in the 7th grade now. And my dad used to say, "All right, boys, we're going down to the woods." I said, "What are we doing?" He would always sit there and say, "I don't know, let's go find out what's down there." I said, "All right." So we'd get down there and we'd get to the edge of the timber lines. My dad would always find young dogwood trees, straight dogwood trees. And he would cut them, measure them up to us, and he would make staffs, but he would sharpen off one end. We were always quite, why are you sharpening off the end? He goes, "Well, you never know. Something might come up where you might have to stab something or throw it at something." And we're just like, okay. And it was just crazy growing up and doing what we were doing, and him teaching us about the woods and teaching us about, there was another run-in. Let's just cut and break that one. Let's go back to something even earlier. I'm 7 years old now, or 8 years old. My little brothers are 6 years old. We went down to the same timbers. And Dad did the same thing. He cut our sticks for us, and we're just sitting there running around throwing them. But he said, "Don't, whatever you do, not throw at each other." And we were like, okay. So we never did that. And we just kept walking. And me and my youngest brother, my younger brothers are twins. And the youngest of the twins is like, "I'm getting bored." I said, "I'm the same with you." And I said, "Hey, Dad, when are we heading back?" He goes, "We'll go back here in a bit." I said, "Okay." So we keep walking south. We're in the timbers, and there's a trail we see. And I said, "Okay, let's follow that trail. Hey, Dad, let's go back home." And he goes, "Well, hold on." And all of a sudden, the oldest of the twins, my brother, just stood there. Jared, he was standing there looking at something. And he was like, "Dad." And my dad was like, "What?" He goes, "Do we have monkeys in the woods?" And he goes, "No." And then he says, "Dad," and my dad was like, "What?" He goes, "What's that?" And it's about 35, 40 yards away from us. He's jet black. I give him at least 8 foot, maybe 7.5, between 7.5 and 8 foot, jet black. And me and my other little brother were standing there looking and looking to where my brother was pointing, and we see him. And we just kind of walk back over there to where he's at. And my dad's standing there looking at the Bigfoot. The Bigfoot's looking at my dad and us. And my brother Jared, he goes, "Is that a monkey?" And my dad goes, "No, that is not a monkey." And my brother said, "Well, what is that?" He goes, "That's a Bigfoot." And at the time, we're young. We have no clue in what a Bigfoot is. He goes, "It's another being that lives in these woods. Whenever you see them, you go the opposite direction. They won't mess with you. They won't do anything to you. Just go the opposite direction. Go back the same way you came. And they'll go back the same way they came." And my little brother's confused. He goes, "Is that a monkey?" And my dad was telling him, "No, that's not a monkey. That's a Bigfoot." And my brother goes, "I have to go see it." Then my dad's just standing there looking at him. And and at the time, my little brother, he's very curious and he's not scared of anything, even at that age. He's not scared. And me and my other little brother, we're sitting there looking at it. He goes, "Hey," Jared's like, "Hey, Pete, Jason, you want to go check it out?" And I'm like, "No, I'm staying right by Dad." And Jason's like, "No, we're staying by Dad." He goes, "I'll be back." I said, "Are you crazy?" And he was like, "I'll be back." "All right." So my dad's standing there, and we're standing there. Like I said, he's about 40 yards away from us. And it's an open section of trees. And my little brother's walking towards him. Now he's at the halfway point, and he's still just glaring at the Sasquatch. And the Sasquatch is standing there looking at him. And my brother's just curious. He keeps tilting his head sideways and looks at him. Then he turns and looks back at us. He goes, "I think that's a monkey, Dad." And my dad was like, "No, that is not a monkey, son." And he's still looking at it. And he probably walks another 10 feet towards it to get a even clearer look at it. And we're just sitting there, me and my little brother, like, okay, we're going to get a head start on this. And we were slowly walking west now on that path, heading back to Grandma's house. And my little brother sitting there goes, "Okay, Dad." And my dad was like, "What?" And he goes, "That's not a monkey. You sure that's not a man?" And my dad was like, "No, son, that's not a man." And he was like, "Are you sure?" And me and my little brother just kind of stopped and turned, and we're looking at my brother. Like I said, he's at the halfway point, beyond the halfway point, looking at the Sasquatch, and the Sasquatch is looking at him. And he's curious, too, why this little child is walking up to him. And he's just staring and looking at him. Then he goes, "Okay, Dad, that is not a monkey. I'm coming back." And he goes, "Well, come on back then." And my little brother's walking towards my dad. And about that time, me and my brother, we're slowly inching our way to the path and heading back to Grandma's house. And my dad says, "Well, did you get a good look at him?" And my little brother goes, "Yeah, that's not a monkey, Dad." And he was like, "Yeah, I know." And he goes, "Okay, I thought we had monkeys in the woods because that monkey over there." And I'm sitting here like, he's crazy. And we were little guys. Like I said, we were young kids. And my little brother just turns and grabs his spear, and he runs and catches up to us. He goes, "That's not a monkey, guys. That looked like a man, a hairy man." And we was like, "Yeah, okay." And we just turned around and we started walking. As we're walking away, we kind of stopped and turned around. My dad's still standing there looking at the Sasquatch, and the Sasquatch is still looking back at him. I don't know if my dad said anything to him or not. And my dad knew about them. He grew up in the same woods. He's always known about them. And as we got older, growing up and going to the woods all the time, my dad always said, if you ever see them and they see you, go back the same way you came. They won't bother you and they won't mess with you, and you leave them alone. And like I said, that's just the way it was growing up. Now we're in junior high. And we're all down at the river. We get up early in the mornings, do our chores, get done. We're staying at our grandparents' house in the summers. And my grandfather had a farm. So we're up early in the mornings. And we're out feeding horses, feeding the cattle, feeding the hogs, feeding the chickens, feeding the peacocks, you name it, they got it. And the goats. And we're sitting there. I mean, my grandfather loved raising hogs. He had over 150 hogs. So imagine the size of those pens. So this is what we did in the summers, and we'd get done with our chores, and we'd be done by 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. And Grandma says, "Where you guys going?" I said, "We're going to the river." She goes, "Okay, you guys coming home for lunch?" I said, "No, we're making sandwiches." So we'd be in there making peanut butter or bologna sandwiches, grab bags of chips and our pops and throw them in little bags, and we just head on down to the river. So me and my brothers would all go down there. And sometimes our friends would show up, and we said, "Where are you going?" "Swimming." "All right, we're going." So they would jump in, and we just walk on down the river. And the river is about 1.5 miles away from us, so it wasn't a long walk. So we're down in the river. Now it's probably around 11, 12 o'clock. We're taking a break from trying to drown each other. And we're just doing what boys do, kicking back, eating our sandwiches, BSing and laughing and just cutting up, just terrorizing one another, teasing. And we're just sitting there just relaxing and chilling. And my little brother gets up, Jason, he runs over, and he's one of the twins again. He runs over and dives into the river, comes back up, and he's stopping. He's staring south. We were sitting there, and I'm just looking south to where he is. And about 50 yards away, 40 yards away again, at the bend in the river, there's a flood spot up on top. It's an overflow. It goes back off and separates and kind of makes an island. And a lot of dead trees are at that point. It's a big blockade of dead trees. So I'm sitting here looking at the top, and what I see are 5 big dogs. To me, they look like dogs at a distance because they're all squatted down and sitting the way dogs sit. There was a brown one, a light brown one, a red one, a grayish one, and a black one. And they were just sitting there looking at us. Their heads were kind of tilted sideways like, a dog would look at us and curious. And we're sitting there, and so we all get up, and we're done eating anyway, and get through all our trash back in the bag, and we're walking over to where my little brother's at, and we're all like, and he's sitting there saying, "Do you see them dogs?" And I said, "Yeah." And we're all looking at it. He goes, "If I was standing up next to one, how big do you think that thing would be?" And I'm just like, that's a good idea. How big is that dang thing? And we were sitting there trying to figure out what species of dog that is, because we don't have St. Bernards in that area. We don't have Great Danes in that area. Man, we're on a reservation, so we got little mutts. And we do have some German Shepherd mixes, so we're decent-sized dogs. But these were giants. So he's like, and if they're going to do anything, they're going to do something. If not, then we can swim and they can't, and that's how we looked at it. And so we ended up dogpiling my little brother who's already in the river. So we're sitting there tossing each other around, wrestling, trying to drown each other. And I'm still sitting there. I'm in the water, the river, and I'm sitting there, just sitting there. And I'm turning back and looking at these dogs. And I'm just trying to figure out, why are they still sitting there and watching us? And I couldn't figure it out. My brother Jared, the brave one, he was just like, "What are you looking at?" I said, "I'm still looking at those dogs." And he was just like, "They ain't going to do anything. If they would have did something, they would have did it by now, or they would already be down here playing with us." And we were just like, "Well, I get that, but why are they still sitting there?" And this is going on 20, 25 minutes now. And I'm still curious, and I'm almost at that point ready to head over there and try to figure out what these dogs are. And I'm just like, oh, the heck with it. Then I ended up diving on my brother and trying to drown him. We're in the river. We're having a heyday. We're just boys do what boys do. And probably 10 minutes are still there, go by, and I'm just like, I got to look. And I'm turning, I look, and they're still sitting there. And next thing you know, one stands up. And I'm just like, holy crap. And I said, "Look, guys," my brothers, we all stopped and we all looked. And we're looking at it. And it stands up. This is the light brown one that stood up. He's tall, but he's not that tall. I probably give him 6 foot. And then the others stood up. And they started walking back towards the timbers. And the grayish one really stood up. And when he stood up, he was the tallest. And they stood up, and we were like, holy crap, look at that. And we were like, those ain't dogs, those are Bigfoots. And we kind of waved at him. It just kind of stared at us, and it just turned around and walked back into the timbers. And like I said, these are encounters I've had growing up my whole life. And I have so many encounters, it's not even funny. My research area that I go to is here on the reservation. And I've been there since 2010, and it's probably the best spot in the res for encounters. I've ran across a 9-footer, light brown in color, 5 at the shoulders. I give him an easy 800-900 pounds. He's a big boy. And the closest I've ever stood to him is probably about 6 inches. He snuck up on me, and I didn't know he was standing there. I just turned around, and I just see this big thing standing right behind me, and I'm looking at his belly button. And I'm not short. I'm 6'5", almost 6'5", 2 tick marks away from 6'5". And I'm staring at him in his midsection. Well, probably his chest area, a little above his stomach, but I'm looking at that point. And then I'm sitting there trying not to lose my cool. And I don't want to look like an idiot running off, like a person that's insane and screaming and shouting and running away. I'm trying to keep my manhood intact. I just like, oh, crap. And I just started slowly looking up and looking up and looking up. Now, If you're in a regular house, your ceilings are 8 foot. Go 1 foot past that. I'm 6'5". I'm looking straight up, and he's looking straight down at me. And he looks human. And I'm trying not to lose it. And I just put my head down, and I slowly back up. And I'm looking at him, he's looking at me, and I'm just like, okay, what do we do next? And I'm still trying to figure this out, and I finally backed up another 5 feet. And I just turned and I continued walking back towards my car. I probably get about 4 or 5 minutes ahead of him, then he turns around and starts to walk behind me. And I'm trying not to run. I'm trying not to lose my cool. I eventually get out of the tree line and I get to my car and I take my backpack off and I turn and look and he's standing at the tree line. He's a 9-footer, light brown, and only thing you can do at that point in time is ooh and awe to see something like that. It's magnificent. You're looking at a being that isn't supposed to exist. You're told your whole life that creatures like this do not exist. Ghosts don't exist. Bigfoots don't exist. It's all a part of your imagination and made up. No, it's not. Once you experience this, your perspective on reality has just changed. You are now looking at a being that does exist. And I've been lucky enough to actually hang out with him. I got to meet his wife. I got to meet his older children. I've actually played hide and seek with his 2 little ones. I've been fortunate enough to hear them sing. I've had awesome encounters with them. When they know that I'm there, I don't even have to make a noise. They know that I'm there, and they'll show up. And they always keep their distance. But after a while, me being down there so much and so often, they're still at keep distance with me, at least 10 foot. But my encounters that I've had with them have been awesome. There is a language barrier, but I've been fortunate enough to listen to them talk and trying to figure out their language. I've been, some people call it mind speaking. They've done that with me. Then I really got to understand them on a personal level. And I could say I've lost count after 40 encounters with them. It's the same family that I've known this long. On my reservation, there are 5 other spots that have Sasquatches and that have been seen. And to my knowledge, they've never harmed a human. They've scared them, but they've never harmed them. And that's what people need to understand, is they won't harm you unless you provoke them. They're just like you and me. You provoke me and try to do something stupid, I'm going to retaliate. This is the same thing, but on a bigger scale. Respect is key with them. You respect them, they'll respect you. They respect you even more if you can stand in their presence without turning and running off like a lunatic and screaming at the top of your lungs. This is something that I've learned with them and hanging out with them. Respect is key. If you can stand in their presence more than 15 minutes, they'll respect you because that's showing them that you're not scared of them. But as soon as you turn and bolt just for giggles, they might chase you just for giggles. I've seen this happen. And they'll stay right on your tail. You think you're a fast runner, you haven't seen them yet. And they'll touch you on the shoulder just to let you know that you're in grabbing range. And this is just scaring you. That's all they're doing is scaring you. They're not going to hurt you. They'll scare you. I've had awesome encounters with them. My son even wanted to go down there. And I've taken my son down there. He didn't get to see one, but he got to hear one. And the one, well, here's the story. My son was curious, and he's always wanted to know about them, and he knows that I know. And he was like, Dad, I want to go see one. I said, well, they'll show themselves if they want to, if you're ready. If you're not, they'll know, but they'll make their presence known. And he was like, okay, well, let's go. This is about midsummer, about 2:30 in the afternoon. We go down to my spot. I rip out a yell. I get 2 tree knocks and a yell back at a distance, probably about a mile away. And I said, give them about 10 minutes. They'll show up. And he goes, are you serious? I was like, yeah, I'm very serious. They know me. And he was like, all right. So we sit there for about 10 minutes and we're just BSing and visiting. And he's telling me about work and everything. And I said, oh, that's good, you know. And then finally, a pecan lands in front of me. It's not a pecan that falls out of a tree due to a squirrel. This was thrown. And it landed and it rolled. And it came from the north. I just turned around and looked the opposite way it rolled. And booyah, there's one tree peeking me. And I said, well, one's here right now. And he goes, how can you tell? I said, I'm looking at him right now. And my son goes, where? I said, turn around. It'll be at your 1 o'clock. And he turns around slowly and he looks and he goes back to 1 o'clock and he sees the Sasquatch. It's a young male. He jumps back a little bit and I said, don't show fear. Just show that you're here and you acknowledge them. That's all you have to do. If you show fear, I said, son, they're going to chase you all the way to the car and you'll probably end up peeing in your pants and screaming like a lunatic when you get to the car. And he was like, okay. And my son held his ground. And then he disappeared. And he goes, where'd he go? I said, I don't know. But they're here. Let's go north. So we started walking north for about 20 minutes. And you can hear them actually walking behind us. They're walking on the sides of us. I even got a whistle. And I whistled back. And I think I knew who that one was. It's a younger son to the big 9-footer. And I acknowledged him and said hi and hello. How are you guys doing today? And they were just sitting there. And next thing you know, I hear chattering. And I said, all right, guys, no chattering. If you got something to say it. Don't do that. I don't like when you guys do that because I can't understand what you're saying. And my son goes, what are they doing? I said, they're communicating. And he goes, that's what they're doing? I said, yeah, that's what they're doing. And he was just like, okay. And he goes, what are they saying? I said, son, I don't know chatter. That's what I just got through saying. I don't understand what they're saying. Either speaking English or mind speak, you know, and I said that out loud. And it just got quiet. I said, all right, you guys are going to be stink about it. I get it. No problem. So we continued walking. And my son goes, well, we didn't get to see one today. And I said, well, you saw one. You only got a real quick glimpse of him. He goes, but I wanted to see a full-figured one. And I'm just like, be careful what you ask for, son. I'm just letting you know that because either you see one full physical form and usually about 20 yards or 10 yards away from you, you're going to either go into lunatic mode and run out of here screaming, or second, you're going to pass out from shock. Third, you're going to accept what you see. It's always best to accept what you see. But then again, I mean, you might lose it. You're kind of weak-minded. And he goes, no, I'm not. And I said, okay, no problem. I'm not saying anything else, not judging. Then my son, he goes, all right, show yourselves, guys. Come out. I want to see you. And he was really trying to coax them to come out, but they wouldn't show themselves because they didn't know him. And I had to talk out loud when he was done, letting them know, this is my son, and he wants to see you. He got a real quick peek of the youngest one up by the tree, but he wants to see you guys full figured in front of him. And it was silent after I said that, and no chattering, no nothing. And I'm just like, okay, I guess they're not going to show themselves, son. And I said, you getting hungry? He goes, yeah. And it's about 4 o'clock, 4:30 now. So we started walking back, and we're halfway through our walk, heading back to the car. And there's a dirt road in these timbers. We just now jumped on this dirt road. We're about 20 yards on this dirt road. The dirt road is probably 50 yards at that. We're 20 yards into it. All of a sudden, this roar ripped out right behind us. I mean, he had to be within 15 feet of us. It was so loud, focused on us. you could feel the vibrations of that roar in your chest. It was that loud. I mean, we froze in our tracks. And after that roar was done, my son goes, "Dad?" I said, "Yes, son." And he was like, "My heart's in my throat." And I started laughing. He goes, "He's right behind us, isn't he?" And I said, "I don't know." Turn around and take a look. He goes, "I can't. I'm scared." I said, "What did I tell you?" He goes, "I know, but that scared the living daylights out of me." And I said, "Yeah, that caught me off guard too." So I just slowly turned and looked. Behind us, there's nothing there. But I could feel the presence of something there. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there. And I said, "There's nothing there, son." And he goes, "Are you serious? That came probably 20 feet, 15 feet behind us." And I was like, "I know." And he was sitting there. He bent over, had his hands on his knees. I said, "Calm down. You're fine. All he did was scare you and catch you off guard. That's all he did. So don't lose your cool. Keep your cool." And my son's like, "I'm trying, Dad. I'm trying." I said, "It's easy. You're overreacting. But I've been doing this for a long time. You haven't. So I get it." And he was just sitting there. And I said, "You know what?" And he goes, "What?" I said, "That was pretty good." He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "You didn't run. I think they were testing you. If you would have ran, you would have had 50 yards to make it back to that car." And I said, "I guarantee one of them would have been chasing you down just to scare you. But you held your ground." I said, "That's showing respect, son, that you can handle whatever they throw at you." And they said, "Probably next time, they'll probably let you see them." So we continued and walked on out. We get back to the car, taking our gear off. And I was like, Are you happy?" And he goes, "Well, I'm kind of happy, but I'm kind of not. But, I got a quick glimpse of one, but I want to see one full figured." So I said, "Maybe next time." And then he goes, "All right." And then about 5 years later, he gets married. And his wife, I know his wife. I've known her for a couple of years. She's a good girl. She calls me on a Friday afternoon, and she was like, "Pete?" I said, "Yes." And she goes, "This is Darian." I said, "I know. What's up?" And she goes, "I want to go Bigfoot." I was like, "What?" And she's like, "Seriously, I want to go Bigfoot. I want to see one." And I said, "I'm not guaranteeing that you'll see one, but there might be and there might not be. And you might get a glimpse, or you might get lucky and see a full figured one." And she was just like, "I don't care. I just want to see one." I was like, "Well, be careful what you ask for." And she goes, "I know. Keith already told me." I said, "All right. Well, Saturday I'm open." No, take that back. Sunday." And she goes, "All right, Sunday it is. We'll be over around 12. I said, "All right." And they show up. And my wife's looking at her, and she goes, "You sure you want to do this?" And she goes, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I want to see one." And then she goes, "All righty then. And I don't want to hear any stories of the boys carrying you out of the woods because you fainted." And she was like, "No, I ain't like that. I'm pretty dang tough." And we're like, "Okay, we'll find out." We get down there. It's probably about 1:45. And we're just sitting there. I'm putting on my knives. I got my 9mm in my back. And he's like, "What are you carrying that for?" And he goes, "Well, they ain't going to do anything." I said, "No, they're not going to do anything. We got cougars down here, bub." "Cougars?" I said, "Yeah. So be alert. Look in the trees. Stay away from the bushes." And he was like, "All right." So Darian's just like, "Oh, I'm so stoked. She's happy." And she's all just happy, just giddy. And I'm just sitting here going, "Oh my goodness, please don't scare her." And we get down there, go down to the bottom, and I let out a yell. I followed it by a whistle, 3 whistles, as a matter of fact. And we got a tree knock and another yell. This one's from the south. I said, give him about 10 minutes, 15 at the most. But the tree knocks, they'll probably be here in about 5. And she's like, "Are you serious?" I say, "Yeah." And Keith goes, "That's what happened last time." And we're sitting there, we're waiting, and we're waiting. And this pecan comes flying out of nowhere, and it lands right in front of me. I said, "All right, I know you're here." Well, there was a joker amongst them. And what do I mean by joker? He's a clown. Instead of throwing pecans, he throws walnuts. and he threw a walnut, ricocheted off the top of a tree and landed right maybe 5 feet in front of my daughter-in-law. And she goes, "Holy crap, that landed right in front of me, but it ricocheted." I was like, "Yeah, it did." And then threw another walnut. It ricocheted off a tree, then landed behind her about 5 feet. And he said, "Oh, he's showing off right now." And I got up and I went out there by her and I stood by her and I said, "Do not throw walnuts. Do not do that. If that walnut hits us, it could hurt us. Do not do that." And I was getting after them. And I said, "Do not do that. I'm asking you nicely, do not throw walnuts. I do not mind pecans. You can throw pecans." Dang, soon as I said that, we were showered with pecans. I mean, they were coming around the Bigfoots were completely surrounding us, but we couldn't see them. But we had a huge rainfall of pecans. And I'm just sitting there with my eyes closed, and I'm just wanting to yell at them, but at the same time, it was funny. You know, like I said, they got a joker amongst them. And the next thing you know, it showered pecans on us. They were landing on us, around us. I mean, it just came down like someone grabbed a pecan tree and just shook it, and they were coming down. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, we got a clown amongst us. And my daughter-in-law and my son were cracking up. And I said, "Did they do that?" I said, "No." And I was just like, I was laughing, and I'm just like, oh God, this is going to be entertaining. So my daughter-in-law was just laughing, and she was just like, "That is crazy." I said, "Yeah, that is crazy. There's a joker and a clown amongst them. So this is going to be an interesting afternoon." And I said, "Let's start walking north." So we're walking north, and we probably walk about 30 minutes, and we're to one of their meeting spots, the Bigfoot's meeting spots. And we're standing out there and we're looking around. I'm looking on the ground and I find a footprint, and it's probably 18 inches, maybe 9 inches wide. And I said, "Here's a footprint right here." And she's looking at it and she goes, "They do walk barefooted." I said, "Yes, they do." "Well, what? You're going to go buy shoes for them? You think they have access to shoes?" I said, she was like, No. I've always wanted to see one. And I'm just like, that'd be a big shoe. And I said, "Yeah, that would be a huge shoe." And she's laughing. So we're still sitting there looking around, and I can hear them walking around. And she goes, who else is down here with us?" I said, "They are." And she goes, "I hear someone walking over here. There's like one or two over here." I said, "Yeah, they've been there for a while. Are you just now picking up on that?" And she was like, "Yeah." And I was just like, "Well, keep your senses and your hearings open." I said, "You'll hear. There's a lot more. There's about 5 or 6 more down here with us. And they're all around us right now." So we're down there, and it's going on 4:30. And I said, "Well, you know, they're not going to show themselves. I figured they would have showed themselves by now. At least one of them would have." And she was a little disappointed. And I said, "Let's head on back. I'm hungry." And I said, "Matter of fact, you guys are buying supper." So they were laughing around. They said, "Okay, Pizza Hut." And I said, "Hey, I'm game with that." So I said, "Lead us out of here, kiddo." So my daughter's walking ahead of us, and my son's still dinging around in the back. I said, "Son, they're down here, and we're walking away. That means you and them." And he goes, "Oh, no. He turns around. He's walking towards us. And now she's about 15 yards in front of me. She is facing east and just staring, not saying anything and just staring. And I'm just like, what the heck she's staring at? So I said, I just keep walking. And I'm right there next to her. And I said, "Let's go." And she's just still staring to the east. I said, "What are you staring at?" And I looked to the east. There's an 8-footer. Chocolate brown. Or almost blackish, really. But it looked more brown than black. He was 8 foot. I gave him 4.5 at the shoulders, easy. Maybe 400, 500 pounds. He's a big boy. He's young. He's big. The Sasquatch is just standing there staring at her, and they locked eyes. And she's just staring in awe at him. And I looked back and said, "Keitha, do you see?" And he goes, "Yeah, long arms, kind of chocolate brown, a little bit darker." And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "I see him." I said, "Okay." And I turned around and looked back to the same area where he was standing. Now he is slowly disappearing in front of us. I mean, actually cloaking out. in front of us. And then he finally disappears. And I looked at my daughter-in-law and said, well, you got to see one. And she just looks at me and she's got this biggest grin on her face. And I said, I'm proud of you, kiddo. You didn't run. You didn't scream. You didn't do none of the craziness. And she was like, I saw a Bigfoot. And I said, yes, you did. And she was just like, oh my God. She's just screaming, jumping all over the place. And I'm stoked for her. My son comes walking up. He goes, I only got to see his arm and his chest, part of his legs, and he disappeared. That's bull. He said the cuss word, and I'm just laughing. I said, well, you should have been up here instead of over there dinging around. And he goes, yeah, well, heck, let's go eat. And we started walking out of there. I said, well, you guys locked eyes, so what did he say? And she goes, he didn't say anything. He just stared. And I'm like, okay. How do you feel? And she goes, I'm excited. I've got to see something that close. They're real. I said, yes, they are very real. You have them across the river in your tribal reservation. She goes, I know. Dad's always told me stories and he's seen them, but he's never been close to one. And I said, well, that was probably about 20 yards you were standing away from him. Maybe 30, somewhere in there. And she goes, he's beautiful. And I'm just like, yeah, they're all right. They're different. And she was just like, but you see how muscular he was? I was just like, yeah. I mean, they're giants. What do you expect? And she goes, he looked like a bodybuilder. I said, they all look that way. All the males look that way. I said, but there's a difference here in Oklahoma. From Oklahoma and south, they're built like basketball players. They're tall and lanky, but they're a little beefy. If you go further north into the Kansas and up in that area into Canada, they're extremely bulky. They're massive. They're huge. And I was just like, that's the difference. And she was just like, what was he? And I said, I think he's a mixture of both. He did look lanky, but he looked more bulkier, beefed up than a basketball player. And she was just like, well, would that mean the northerners down here? I said, not necessarily. They do intermingle with one another and have different offspring. So the possibilities, he's an offspring of someone from the north. And she was like, oh my God. Oh my God. And she's just sitting there screaming. She's just happy. And I was like, all right, let's go. You guys owe me Pizza Hut. Let's go. So we got back to the car, ungeared, jumped in, and she's all stoked and she's just happy and everything. And we get there, Pizza Hut. They ended up buying 4 larges, and we went back to the house and then told my wife about the excursion. And my wife was, you got to see one? Oh, that's bull crap. I still haven't seen one. I've been there in their presence, but I've never seen one. But in my area, we have stories of them taking us back up to Niagara Falls. My tribe, the Ponca Nation, originated up in the Niagara Falls area. Then we migrated across the north over to the Oneidas. And then we went back over, kind of back to the east a little bit, up into the Indiana area. And then we migrated down south to St. Louis. And then our tribe was so big at one time. I mean, this is how big our tribe was. We couldn't feed everybody. So we ended up breaking off into 5 different tribes. And the Poncas broke off. So out of the Poncas, you got Omahas, Osages, Quapaws, and I want to say Caws. But you got 5 tribes out of one tribe, and we all dispersed around St. Louis and went our separate ways. That's how big this tribe was. And we all have stories, you know. In 1877, on our forced march, the Poncas left Fort Laramie to move to Indian Territory down here in present-day Kay County, Oklahoma. As we were leaving Niobrara, we had 4 gray blankets. I can't think of their traditional names, but their translated means gray blankets. And what they did, they sewn 2 army blankets together. It was 3 army blankets. They sewn them together and presented them to the Bigfoots. And they wore them the way we wear our robes, our blue and red robes or our red robes. They wore them the same way. In our stories, Bigfoots lived amongst us and we lived amongst them. And this is how far we go back in my tribe's history with Sasquatches. We separated from the Sasquatches during the Oklahoma land run around that time. We kept our boundaries as the Sooners and the land runners came into our territories. We stood on guard on our land and told them to keep going and going until you run into one of us again. Then I'll let you know how far our property is, our lands are. And they did. And we had no problems with the land runners or anything like that. It wasn't until maybe 5 years later, the land runners or landowners, new landowners, were having encounters with Sasquatches. And it was scaring them. And this is their first times ever running to Bigfoots or anything like that. And being Native Americans, we always believed what we were told the white man would always tell us. And the white man told us that they're monsters. They're scary. They'll kill you. They'll eat you. That's what they'll do to you. And us believing what we're being told, we pulled away from them. And every once in a while, a generation, one of us will end up befriending them and trying to get them to our tribe, to get them to back to the way it was, the friendship and the harmony that we had with them. It hasn't happened yet, but hopefully, maybe in my lifetime it'll happen. But then again, maybe it might be another lifetime. But we have stories that go back and go hand in hand, Ponkas and Bigfoots, and it's always been that way. They're the ones who taught us to survive. They're the ones that taught us plants. They're the ones who taught us basically survival. And these are our stories. You know, with these stories, I have my stories. And I'm 54 years old. I'm still having encounters with them. You know, that's a long time. When I was in the military, I'm a United States Marine. And when I was in the military, I had one with me. He always kept me, I would say, out of trouble, out of harm's way. It was just the way it was. After I got out of the military, I worked for the casinos, the tribal casinos there in California for a while. Oh man, the crazy encounters we had at the casino. I mean, insane. You'd actually get to see a 9-foot shadow walking through the middle of a casino. And it sounds crazy, but we have it on videotape. And people were freaking out because they thought it was a demon or it was a spirit or something. In reality, yeah, it is a spirit, but it can exist in this realm and it can exist in their realm. Sasquatches are very spiritual. They don't know any more than we do on God and Jesus, but they know they exist. They do believe in a higher power. The teachings and the knowledge that they have is something that is fascinating. I've been writing down what we discuss, what they teach me. I've been writing it all down. My stories will continue and still continue. I've taken people down to my area. I've taken a guy down there by the name of Richard, and he's a half believer. And he was like, Pete, I want to see a Sasquatch. And I was like, I can't guarantee that. He goes, but I can probably get you in the presence of one, but I don't know if he'll show himself. If he shows himself, that's something special. And he goes, I don't care. I want to witness this. And I was just like, all right, come on. We set a date. He come into town, picked me up, and told my wife what was going on. She goes, you tell Richard to be careful because this is something not normal to them. And I was like, I know. I'll give him the lecture and the spill. And she goes, keep an eye on him. And I said, I will, don't worry. And we get to my area, and then he gets out of the truck. I jump out the other side of the truck. I throw my knives on. I throw my 9mm in my back, and he does the same thing. So we're down in my area for about a good hour and a half. He goes, I know they're here. I can feel them. I said, yeah, like I said, you'll sense them. You'll feel their presence. But if they show themselves, that's something special. But I don't know if they're going to show themselves. So, Richard, we were getting ready to leave. And Richard he goes, Pete, I'm going to walk over to this spot. It's about 30 yards away from us. It's a big open area and trees are all around it, but it's an open spot. Shady. I'm going to stand there. I said, okay, you stand there. And could you say something for me? I said, what do you want me to say? He goes, tell him who I am. I was like, all right, I'll do that. So Richard walks over there and he's standing there. And I start talking out loud to the Bigfoots. And I introduce Richard. And I said, he's a good man. He's a really good man. And he wants to see you. He wants to see you in your full physical form. He's a half believer. He kind of believes in you guys, but at the same time, he doesn't. So if he could actually see you in the full physical form, he will believe from this point on in you and know that you exist and you're real. So we were sitting there, and I like I said that out loud. And it was probably about 5 minutes later, I heard something moving around us, and it was on two legs. It wasn't a deer. It was two legs, and it was walking. It was heavy. And he's standing out there. He goes, Pete. I said, what? He goes, I have got goosebumps. I'm not joking. Every hair on my body is standing on end. And he had long hair, and he had his hair in a ponytail. He goes, brother, if my ponytail can stand straight backwards, it would right now. And I said, well, you have one around you. I said, I can hear him, but I can sense him, but he's around you, but I can't see him. And next thing you know, it kind of backed off. And next thing you know, it circled around the tree. And about this time, he's about 25 yards away from Richard on the south side. And right there in that certain section, there's an opening in the trees and this sunlight's coming through. I mean, it's just bright. And we're standing there. And I heard a twig snap, and I looked to the south, and there's a red-headed Sasquatch. He's about 8 foot, 8.5. He's big. He's a big boy. And his hair was dark red, not brown. It was a dark, deep red. It was actually a pretty red. And he came walking out of the shadows, and he stood in the sunlight, and he was looking at Richard. And Richard's looking back at him. And I said, Richard, you see him? He goes, yes, I do. I said, is that a bear? He goes, that is not a bear. Is that a deer? That is no deer. And I said, is that a buffalo? And he goes, no, that's not a buffalo. I'm telling you right now, that is not a buffalo. I said, what are you looking at? He goes, that is a Bigfoot. Oh my God, that is a Sasquatch. That is the prettiest thing I've ever seen in my life. And this Sas is just standing there staring at Richard. And Richard's staring back. Richard's in total awe. And that Sasquatch looks at him, then turns around and walks back south, back into the shadows of the trees. Disappears back in the shadows of the trees. And Richard's still standing there. His mouth's wide open. He's just standing there. And I was like, crap. I walked over to him, and I'm standing in front of Richard. Richard's still looking like he's looking past me. And I said, Richard, are you there? Earth to Richard. And Richard's just still staring. I was like, heck, he's getting ready to go into shock. Then I slapped him in the face. He snapped out of it. He goes, what'd you hit me for? I said, why didn't you answer me? And he was just like, you said my name. I said, like 4 times, standing right in front of you. He goes, oh my God, that was a Bigfoot. That was a Sasquatch. That was a Bigfoot in living, breathing Sasquatch. I said, yeah. I said, he must have thought you were special. He showed himself to you. And I said, that doesn't happen. That's rare that happens. And Richard was just in awe. He's still standing there in awe. And I said, I just looked at it. I said, I'm hungry. You're buying. Let's go. And I was walking off, and I turned around and looked. Richard's still standing. I said, come on, boy. I went back over there, grabbed him by his arm. I said, let's go. I said, you're kind of in between shock and reality here. I need you to snap out of it. Come on, snap out of it with me. Come on. I'm snapping my fingers. He goes, I got my bearings. I know where I'm at. I say, are you sure? Where are you? He goes, I'm over here in the East Timbers with you. I say, okay, let's go. I got to get you out of here. And he was like, all right. So we walked out of there, and took us about 10, 12 minutes to get to the truck. So we get to the truck, and I looked at him. I said, are you happy? And he just like, yes, I'm happy. I'm a believer. They exist. They are very real. They are flesh and blood. I said, yes, they are. You're still a lucky man. I mean, like I said, they don't show themselves to anybody. And he goes, it must have been how you spoke to them about me. And I was like, I don't think it was. I think they were probably curious about you too. And Richard just sat there and looked at me, and he just smiled. And I was just like, yeah, you're buying lunch. Let's go. And I'm hungry. And got our gear through in the back of the truck, and he goes, okay, let's go. So we got in and we left. Went to chow, turned around, went home, sat and talked with my wife. Richard was there, and he told him what happened. She was upset because she still hasn't seen one. But like I said, I've had stories and stories of my encounters with them. You know, I played hide and seek with one, actually the children. That was interesting. Them little things, those little beings, those are one of the fastest creatures on the face of this earth. I'm not joking. You think an adult can move, you haven't seen a little one. And these two little twins loved hide and seek. And I was going tree to tree trying to find them. And all I could hear was giggling and laughing because I'd get to the tree and they weren't there. And I'd turn around and look, there they are by another tree peeking out and just laughing. And they go behind the tree, and I'd run over to the tree and they're not there. And I'm just like, oh man. So I ended up playing hide and seek with them probably about a good 20, 25 minutes. So while I'm sitting there running around and chasing them and trying to find them, Mama and Daddy are sitting on top of the hill watching. I didn't even know they were there. And I just happened to turn around and look up. And when I did, Mom and Dad was there. And they didn't say anything. They know I'm not a threat. And they just turned around and walked. But their big brother was standing off to the sides, keeping an eye on me. So, like I said, I mean, I've got a lot of stories and crazy stories. Here's another story, but this doesn't pertain to a Sasquatch. This was probably my first run-in with a dog man. It's in the summer, late summer. I was giving classes on Bigfoots, and I had about 5 Native American girls and their mom wanted to go to my area and wanted to see Bigfoot tracks and see if we could see one. We did. We got there about 12 o'clock, midsummer, getting hot. And we got out, and I gave them the rules. Don't run. Just stand there. If you're scared as heck, you know, just stand there. Do not run. Whatever you do, do not run. So we're sitting there, and we're going through the woods. And I had a good friend of mine with me, Bruce. And at the time, I didn't bring my gun with me. I had 2 buck knives on me. And he had his buck knife, and only thing he brought with him was a .22. That was it. I said, you could have brought something bigger. He goes, yeah, ain't nothing going to happen. I said, coyotes run up, we'll just pop them off. I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, all right, cool. So we're down there, and we're walking north in the middle of the timbers, and it's hot. Everybody's hot, sweaty. And we get to the meeting area, the Sasquatch meeting area. And I'm looking on the ground. Don't find any prints. I found an old print. And I was like, okay, there's an old print right here, guys. And they were really looking at it, and they were oohing and awing it. I said, yeah, it is something to ooh and awe. But who in the heck would be walking around down here barefooted, especially in these woods? And they're sitting there laughing around, and I got this weird feeling coming over me. I know when a Sasquatch is around, I always get a weird feeling. It's not a feeling of paranoia. It's a heavy feeling in my chest, and it's hard for me to breathe. And I said, well, there's one around. And he goes, how do you know? I said, it's a pattern I get from them. And I'm looking north, and I'm just slowly scanning the area over, and I caught a tree peeker. He's a young one, teenager. And he's sitting there looking, and then he disappears, and he pops up by another tree. So I'm really watching him. And one of the girls goes, what are you looking at? I said, there's a Sasquatch right over there, and he's tree peeking us. And they said, where at? And I pointed the tree out to them. I said, just watch that tree. You'll see him peek out real quick, look at us, and he'll pull his head back. And then he'll try to, you girls turn around and look towards me. And then when he does, I'll tell you when he moves. So they turned around, looked at me, and I said, he's still in the same spot. He's moving now. He'll be going to our right. And they just slowly turned and look, and they would actually see him run tree to tree. He's trying to get close to us is what he's trying to do. And we get down there, and he's probably 60 yards away from us. He wouldn't get any closer than that. And they were really curious. I said, he isn't going to come up to us. He doesn't know you guys. He might know me, but he doesn't know you guys. So he's going to be cautious. And I said, okay. So we stood down there for a couple more minutes, and the mom says, okay, it's time for us to go back. She goes, I am hot and sweaty. And I said, yeah, I agree with that. It's getting hotter. So let's get on back, guys. So we started walking back. We're about halfway back. And like I said, in my timbers, there's a dirt road. And just put it this way, before we got to the dirt road, my friend, Bruce, was leading us out, and he put his hands up, halt. Then he gestured squat down. So we squatted down, and I was sitting there thinking, what's going on here? So I walk up to him. I said, what's going on? He goes, I just stepped on this road and looked down. I swear to God, I thought that was a baby cow. I said, what do you mean? I could see this cow pacing on the right side. It's on the east side. And I said, what was it doing? It was going back and forth, going back and forth. Then finally, I just saw it, and it leaped across the road. I said, leaped? You're talking about a little calf. He goes, okay, I would say a yearling. I give it at least 3 years, maybe 4. It's pretty good size. I was like, okay. A cow doesn't do that. And he goes, I know a cow doesn't do that, but that's what I saw. And I'm like, okay. So I get back there, and I'm talking to the girls. I said, what we're going to do is, me and Bruce is going to walk on the left side of you, and we're going to walk back, but you guys cannot step on any leaves, any twigs, no nothing. Keep your heads down. And when you get to the end of that tree line, you haul butt up to the car. I want you running full throttle open, and you are nitrous. You are moving. So I said, whatever you hear, whatever you think you're seeing, don't look that way. Keep your heads down and just walk. And they said, okay. And the mother was like, what's going on? I said, I'll tell you when we get back to the car. And she goes, okay. So we're walking, and we're halfway on this road. They're not making a sound. You can't even hear them walk. That's how quiet these girls are. But to the left side of us, on the east side, there's this rustling, branches popping, busting, and me and my boy Bruce happened to look over there, and we saw it wasn't a Sasquatch. I give this guy at least 6.5, 7 foot in height. And Bruce goes, what is that? And I said, I have an idea, but I'm not sure. I want to take a closer look, but I'm not that brave at this moment because I think I know what that is. And he goes, well, what is it? I said, don't say anything. Just keep walking. I'll fill you in when we get to the car. And we're actually standing there, and these girls are still walking past us. And I said, if it comes down to it, Bruce, if we have to go hand to hand, I'm just letting you know, you better break that knife out, and you better unload every round you got in that rifle. It's only going to piss him off, but at least it give us a tactical advantage if we have to fight this thing. And he goes, what is it? I said, it's a dog man. He goes, are you joking? And I was like, no. The girls get past us, and they hit the edge of the tree line, and they took off. I said, let's go. The heck with it. We're not, no confrontation, no nothing. Let's get out of here. So we're walking north fast. We're not making any noise either. As we're walking, we're watching where we're stepping. And we get to the end of that tree line. We both took off. And I just remember it's still fresh in my brain. It's walking away from us, popping tree branches, throwing them to the ground, just grabbing tree branches and busting them. He's making us know that he is there. And we get to the car, and the girls are taking ticks off them. And it was pretty hot. The ticks were pretty bad that summer. The mom was like, what was that? I said, that was a dog man. And she goes, a what? I said, a dog man. They're probably one of the wickedest creatures in the cryptid world. They're fast. They're mean. They're killing machines. And she goes, what was it doing in our woods? I said, that's a good question because I have no idea what's going on. So I'm just sitting here wondering, and I'm telling Bruce the same thing. He goes, I said, did you see the ears on the side of that being? He goes, the ears weren't on the sides. They were on top. I said, exactly. That was a dog man. That was not a Sasquatch. I said, you got to see it pace back and forth and jump over that road in one leap. And it waited for us to get down there to make its presence known. And he was just like, would it have fought us? I said, I can't speak for it and I don't know, but that would probably been one of the scariest fights you and me probably would have ever been in if we did. And the girls are sitting there a little freaked out. Well, we got to see a Bigfoot, but we didn't get to see the dog man. I said, that's something you don't need to see right now. I said, that will give you nightmares. No, I'm glad you didn't see it. And I said, you got the ticks off? Everybody was tick free at that time. And I said, all right, guys, class is dismissed until next time. So they said, all right. And got hugs from all the girls. And they said, all right, we're out of here. I said, okay, you guys be careful. Go get something to eat, cool off, do whatever you guys do. All righty. Then they took off. So me and Bruce were still there. And me and Bruce were still looking at each other. And he goes, that's my first time ever seeing one. I said, that's mine too. He goes, you see how muscular that thing was? I said, yeah, I know. I said, yeah, it probably would have threw you and me around like rag dolls. And he was just like, I don't ever want to see that again. I was like, you could say that right now, but eventually you probably will see more of them. I said, this is the first time I've seen one in this area. I've never heard of them being in this area. So this is something new, and I'm going to have to figure out what's going on. So we get ungeared and we take off and get back to his house, and I tell him later, and he goes, all right. I said, tell your wife the adventure for the day. She goes, I will, but she won't believe me. I said, well, it is what it is, brother. And he goes, yeah, I know, but I don't ever want to see one of those again. And I started laughing. I said, yeah, me neither, but it's going to happen. It always does. And he was like, yeah, especially here in this territory. I said, yeah, especially this territory. And I just gave him laters, and I jumped in my car, threw my gear and jumped in and came on home and told my wife what took place and what happened. Her questions were, what is that thing doing here? And I was like, I don't know. I have to find out, but I will find out eventually. And I can continue on that story later on. But, like I said, I've had crazy experiences in my territory with a lot of cryptids. And it's just getting crazier because it's getting more and more. And I'm wondering why. So, yeah, it gets crazy in my area. And I know there are other areas probably just like this too, but they're not going to say anything. But I will.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves and the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah, the sound of a memory brings me back to the bluegrass playing on my dad's 8-track. His pecan man had been through it, getting through the day on scrugs and skags, bucking hay bales to those Tennessee jams. There's no other way that I'd do it. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Something coming backwards in double time, getting to the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. when the stereo's booming. When I hear the front porch picking down home rhythm ringing out. I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Something going backwards in double time. Getting in the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems drumming out country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down home rhythm ringing out. I don't run from banjo music. Something going backwards in double time. Getting in the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems drumming out country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down home rhythm, fried chicken, porch swing, mama's best sweet tea kind of sound.